deer's hydraulics were making that sound again. The one Dad always said meant I was due for a rebuild I couldn't afford. $1,700 at Kemper's shop, last I checked. Maybe $2,000 now. Everything costs more when you're hemorrhaging money like we were. Like I was. Dad's been gone 3 years and I still think we, when I mean the farm that's killing me one payment at a time. I was out by the South 40 when the silo went up. Heard it before I saw it. This deep crump that you feel in your chest more than your ears. Like when lightning hits close enough to make your fillings hurt. Turned the deer around and saw the black column rising over the property line. Over where Mitchell Agricenses had their fancy new facility. The one they built 2 years ago that Dad said would ruin the groundwater. Turns out Dad was wrong about that. Wish he'd been wrong about more things. The smoke wasn't smoke. Not exactly. Too thick, too dark, and it moved wrong. Not drifting with the wind, but spreading out in this perfect circle. Like someone was pouring oil across the sky. I killed the engine and just sat there, one hand still on the wheel, watching this thing bloom over the fields. My phone buzzed. Text from Danny Reeves, who ran the Texaco at the junction. Explosion at Mitchell. Stay inside. Emergency services going out. I texted back, I'm in the field. 3 dots. Then, get to your house. Now. I started the deer back up. That hydraulic whine sounded worse, or maybe I was just paying attention to it now, trying to focus on something normal while that black shit kept spreading overhead. The column had to be 300 feet high, and the base of it was wider now, covering Mitchell's whole facility. Couldn't see their buildings anymore. Just that darkness, and I swear to God it was getting darker as I watched, like it was sucking light right out of the air. Takes 20 minutes to drive from the South 40 to the house on the access road. I made it in 12, and halfway there the darkness started falling. Not rain, not ash, something else. Little black flecks like burnt paper, except they didn't drift. They fell straight down, heavy, and when they hit the hood of the deer they stuck. Started accumulating in the corners of the windshield. I hit the wipers and they just smeared, left these dark streaks. The emergency alert went off on my phone halfway up the drive. That horrible buzzing tone that makes your spine try to crawl out through your throat. I nearly put the deer in the ditch. Emergency alert. Do not enter southern Kansas. Spore breathing fatal. Spore. That's what they were calling it. I looked at the windshield, at that black film building up, and I thought about the air filter on the deer. Thought about how old it was. Thought about how I'd been meaning to change it for 3 months but never got around to it because the parts cost $60 I didn't have. Thought about my lungs. Got to the house and ran inside. Didn't even shut off the tractor. Left it running in the yard like Dad would have killed me for. The kitchen smelled like the coffee I'd made that morning. Back when the biggest problem I had was whether I could make the loan payment this month. The TV was still on, playing some rerun of The Price is Right. I stood there breathing hard, watching Bob Barker tell some lady from Ohio she'd won a dinette set, and my phone buzzed again. Emergency alert. Shelter in place. Seal windows and doors. I've got duct tape in the mudroom. Everyone in Kansas has duct tape in the mudroom. Started going around sealing the windows, watching through the glass as more of that black shit fell from the sky. It was covering everything now, the yard, the barn, the deer I'd left running. The tractor's exhaust was still pumping out white smoke, and where it hit that black stuff in the air, it turned gray, then dark, then disappeared. My hired hands were still out there. Had 3 guys working the north fields, Jorge, Preston, and old Eddie Warnock, who'd worked for my dad back when I was still shitting my pants. Eddie was 68, had emphysema from 40 years of smoking Pall Malls, could barely walk up a flight of stairs without stopping to catch his breath. And he was out there in that. I tried calling Jorge first, straight to voicemail. Preston's phone rang 6 times, then cut off. Eddie didn't even have a cell phone, said they gave you cancer, said he'd already done enough damage with the cigarettes. Stood at the window and watched the black stuff pile up. It was maybe an inch deep now on the windowsill outside. on the deer's hood, on the barn roof, the whole world turning black, and Bob Barker asking if the lady wanted to spin again or take the cash. The TV cut out, just died mid-sentence, and the emergency broadcast system came on with that tone again. A woman's voice, very calm, very official. This is the emergency alert system. A hazardous materials incident has occurred at Mitchell Agrison's in Butler County. Residents within a 10-mile radius should shelter in place immediately. Do not go outside. Do not breathe outdoor air. Seal all windows and doors. Emergency personnel are responding. 10-mile radius. I was 6 miles from Mitchell's, right in the middle of the shit. The voice kept going. The substance released is a biological agent. Exposure may cause respiratory failure. If you have been exposed, seek medical attention immediately. Do not attempt to drive. Emergency services will be unable to respond at this time. That last part was the kicker. Unable to respond. Meaning if you fucked up and breathed that stuff, you were on your own. I finished taping the windows and stood in the kitchen, listening to the house. The refrigerator humming. The clock above the stove ticking. The one with the rooster on it that Mom bought in 1987. The foundation settling the way old houses do. Little pops and creaks that sound like footsteps if you're not paying attention. Outside, the deer finally ran out of gas and died. The silence after was worse than the explosion. 3 hours later, I saw Eddie walking across the north field. I was upstairs in Dad's old room, which has the best view of the property. Had the binoculars he used for checking the crop lines, and I was watching the black stuff settle. It was about 3 inches deep now, covering everything like some fucked up snowfall. The barn, the machine shed, the fence posts, all of it just shapes under that darkness. And then Eddie came walking out of it. Same blue coveralls he always wore. Same John Deere cap, the one with the oil stain on the brim from when he'd used it to check the dipstick on the grain truck. Walking with that same bow-legged gait he'd had ever since his hip went bad in '09. Coming right up the access road toward the house. I yelled down from the window, "Eddie, Eddie, get inside. The house is sealed." He didn't stop, didn't wave, just kept walking with his head down, like he was trudging through a snowstorm and couldn't hear me over the wind. Except there wasn't any wind. There wasn't any sound at all except my own voice bouncing back off the glass. He got closer and I could see him better through the binoculars. Something was wrong with his face. Too dark, even accounting for the shadow from his cap. And his coveralls weren't quite right. They looked wet or maybe just darker than they should be, like he'd been rolling in mud. "Eddie, can you hear me?" He was at the porch now. I watched him reach for the door handle. "Don't come in." I was running down the stairs, trying to think. The door was sealed with duct tape around the frame. If he opened it, that black shit would get in. If he was already contaminated, and Jesus Christ, he had to be contaminated walking around out there, then letting him in would contaminate me. But it was Eddie. Eddie who'd taught me how to drive the grain truck when I was 12. Eddie who'd helped Dad put up the barn after the tornado in '03. Eddie who'd shown up to Mom's funeral even though he barely knew her, just because that's what you did. I got to the front door and looked through the window. Eddie was standing on the porch, hand on the doorknob, not turning it, not knocking, just standing there with his hand on the knob. "Eddie, you okay?" He turned his head toward me. Slow, too slow, like it took him a few seconds to remember which direction my voice was coming from. His face was black, not dirty, black, like someone had dipped him in ink. His eyes were open, but they weren't reflecting light right, weren't doing that thing eyes do where you can see the person inside. His mouth was open a little bit and something dark was crusted around his lips. "Eddie, can you talk?" Nothing, just that slow turn of his head, and then he was looking at me through the window. Looking at me but not seeing me. I know the difference. I'd seen it in Dad's eyes those last few months when the cancer had him so doped up on morphine he didn't know where he was. Eddie's hand came off the doorknob. He turned, that same slow, mechanical movement, and walked back off the porch, down the steps, across the yard, back toward the access road. I watched him through the window until he disappeared into the fields again, going back north, going back to wherever he'd come from. My phone was getting text messages, but no calls were going through. The cell towers were probably overloaded, or down, or something worse. Danny from the Texaco town's evacuating. Roads blocked at county line. Military. My cousin Beth in Wichita. Are you okay? News says don't go outside. And then one from a number I didn't recognize. This is Dr. Helen Kowalski, KDHE. If you are in the affected area, do not interact with anyone exhibiting symptoms. They are not conscious. Do not attempt rescue. Not conscious. Eddie walking across my field. Jorge and Preston still out there somewhere. Not conscious. I went back upstairs and watched through the binoculars. After about 20 minutes, I saw him again. Eddie back at the tractor he'd been running. It was one of the old ones, the Massey Ferguson from the 80s that Dad had kept around because it was too useful to scrap even though it broke down every other week. Eddie climbed up into the seat and started it. I heard the engine turn over even from the house, that distinctive diesel rattle. And then Eddie put it in gear and started driving. Not toward the house, just driving, making rows, like he was still working the field. 2 p.m. Jorge came back. Then Preston. Both of them black-faced, both of them moving with that same slow, mechanical purpose. Preston got on the grain truck. Jorge went into the machine shed and came out with the disc harrow. They were all working, all three of them going through the motions of their jobs like it was a normal day, like they hadn't been breathing poison for the last 4 hours, like they weren't already dead. Because that's what they were. Had to be. Nobody survives breathing that shit. The alert said respiratory failure. But there they were, operating heavy equipment, following the patterns Dad had drilled into them and drilled into me for proper field maintenance. The phone buzzed again. Different alert this time. Emergency alert. Firebreak operations underway. Expect burns. I looked out at my fields, at the 3 men working them, at the black stuff covering everything, 3 inches deep and still falling, at the land my great-grandfather had bought in 1891, that my grandfather had almost lost in the Depression, that Dad had bled for. And I understood what they were going to do. The convoy showed up at sunset, 4 Humvees and a tanker truck, all of them rolling up the access road with their lights off. I watched them from Dad's window, wondering if I should go down and let them know I was here, or if maybe they already knew and that's why they'd come. A man got out of the lead Humvee. Not military despite the convoy, he was wearing a hazmat suit, the kind with the built-in respirator and the reflective visor. He walked up to my porch and knocked on the door. I went downstairs, stood on the other side of the sealed door. I can't open it. His voice came through muffled. Kendrick Paulson? That stopped me. How do you know my name? Property records. I'm Colonel Briggs, Kansas National Guard, working with KDHE. We need to talk about your land. I'm not opening this door. Don't. But I need you to listen. He shifted his weight, and I could see another figure in a hazmat suit standing by the tanker truck. The spores from Mitchell are converting organic matter. Everything they touch. Soil, crops, livestock, people. I know. I've got 3 men out there right now still working. Silence. Then, they're not men anymore, Mr. Paulson. They're vectors. Mobile contamination units. Everything they touch spreads the infection further. I looked out the window at Preston on the grain truck, making perfect rows. They're still working the fields. They're operating on residual motor memory, last actions before brain death. We've seen it across the contamination zone, Farmhands still farming, truckers still driving. One guy at a feedlot kept working the cattle chute for 6 hours after exposure. Sorted 300 head before he finally stopped moving. My throat was dry. Why'd he stop? Complete cellular breakdown. The spores consume everything eventually. He paused. Mr. Paulson, we need to establish a fire break. Your property is on the edge of the contamination zone. We burn here, we might stop the spread before it reaches Wichita. Burn my farm. Burn everything from here to Mitchell's. 3,000 acres. Yours is about 400 of that. 400 acres. Dad's land. Great-grandpa's land. The South 40 where I'd been working that morning, back when the hydraulics were my biggest problem. What about them? I pointed toward the window, toward Eddie and Jorge and Preston still working in the dark, their equipment lights cutting through the black dust. They burned too. I pressed my forehead against the door. The duct tape was warm from the afternoon sun. How long do I have? Firebreak starts at 0600 tomorrow. You've got 12 hours to decide if you want to evacuate or defend your property. Defend it how? You don't. But some people choose to stay anyway. His voice got quieter. I'm supposed to tell you there's a FEMA station at the county line. Food, shelter, compensation paperwork. But I'll level with you, nobody's getting their land back from this. The spores have contaminated the soil down to the bedrock. Even after we burn it, nothing's going to grow there for 50 years. Maybe never. I thought about the loan payments, the mortgage, the property taxes that came due every November like clockwork. All of it for land that was already dead, being worked by men who were already dead, while I stood in this house that had been in my family for 5 generations and listened to a man in a hazmat suit tell me it was over. Can I ask you something, Colonel? Sure. The men out there, Eddie, Jorge, Preston, are they suffering? Long pause. We don't think so. Brain activity drops to near zero within an hour of exposure. They're not aware of what they're doing. So they're already gone. Yes. Then why do they keep working? I don't know, Mr. Paulson. I really don't. He left me with a radio frequency and a warning that I had until 0600 to get out. After the convoy drove away, I went back upstairs and watched my employees, my dead employees, work through the night. I didn't sleep, just sat in Dad's chair by the window, watching those equipment lights move across the fields. Eddie on the Massey Ferguson, making passes that would have been perfect if anyone had been there to check his work. Preston on the grain truck, even though there wasn't any grain to haul and wouldn't ever be again. Jorge with the disc harrow, breaking up soil that was already full of spores, spreading them further with every pass. Around 3 a.m., my phone got a message from Beth. They're saying on TV the whole county might be lost. Are you out? I didn't answer. What was I supposed to say? That I was sitting in the dark watching dead men farm? That in 3 hours, the National Guard was going to burn everything my family had built? Another message, this one from Danny. They closed the Texaco, made everyone leave. I'm in Wichita at my sister's. Where are you? The lights kept moving in the fields, methodical, purposeful, following the patterns Dad had taught them, that his father had taught him, going back to when my great-grandfather first broke this land with a mule-drawn plow. At 4 a.m., I went down to the basement. Dad's gun safe was down there, a big Browning he'd bought in the 90s when he still had money to spend on things like gun safes. Inside were his hunting rifles, the .30-06 he'd used for deer, the .22 for varmints. And underneath those, the thing I'd come down here for, Dad's Vietnam-era Zippo and a 5-gallon can of kerosene he'd kept for the barn lanterns. I sat on the basement floor with these things and thought about what Colonel Briggs had said. Everything from here to Mitchell's. 3,000 acres, 400 of them mine. The firebreak would start at my property line and work its way east, consuming everything in a band half a mile wide. They'd save Wichita, maybe definitely save Hutchinson and the towns beyond. But everything in that band would be gone. Unless I started the fire first. Burn it on my terms instead of theirs. Burn it while I chose what went and what stayed. Burn it as an act of mercy for 3 men who were already dead but didn't know enough to stop working. I went back upstairs and looked out at them. Eddie had just finished a pass and was turning the Massey Ferguson around for another run. Preston was parked by the grain silos, just sitting there in the truck, waiting for dawn and another day of work that would never come. Jorge was still harrowing, even though the field didn't need it, even though he'd already made that pass twice tonight. They'd been good employees. Eddie had worked for Dad for 30 years. Preston had helped me bring in the winter wheat last year when I'd gotten the flu and couldn't get out of bed. Jorge had a daughter in Wichita, studying to be a nurse. He'd shown me pictures of her graduation last month. Proud as hell. And now they were vectors, mobile contamination units, their bodies still working, still farming, while the spores ate them from the inside out and spread to everything they touched. At 5:30 a.m., I made my choice. I took Dad's kerosene can and the Zippo and went out to the mudroom. The duct tape on the back door pulled away easy. I'd done a shit job sealing it, honestly, too panicked to do it right. The door opened and the smell hit me first. Not burning, not decay. Something else. Something organic and wrong, like meat left out in the sun mixed with fertilizer. The spore dust on the porch was 4 inches deep now. I stepped out into it and my boots sank. Felt like ash but heavier, wetter. Each step left a perfect print behind me. Eddie saw me first. Or maybe not saw, I don't think he could see anymore, not really. But he turned toward me anyway. Stopped the Massey Ferguson and climbed down, started walking my direction. "It's okay, Eddie," I said. My voice sounded strange in that silence. Too loud. "It's okay. You can stop now." He kept coming. His coveralls were crusted with the black stuff, and up close I could see it wasn't just on him, it was in him, growing out of his skin in little thread-like filaments, spreading across his face like a fungus. His mouth was open and something dark dripped from it. Preston and Jorge were coming too, all 3 of them converging on me, moving with that same slow purpose. Not threatening, just responding, like they recognized me and remembered that when the boss showed up, you were supposed to stop working and see what he needed. "I need you to stand still," I said. "Can you do that?" They stopped. All 3 of them, maybe 20 feet away, just stopped and stood there, waiting. I opened the kerosene can and started walking, pouring a line across the yard between the house and the barn. The liquid soaked into the spore dust, turned it darker. I went to the barn and poured kerosene along the base of the wall. To the machine shed and did the same. To the grain silos and circled them, leaving a ring of kerosene. Eddie and Preston and Jorge just watched me. Or didn't watch, they faced my direction at least. Silent witnesses to what I was doing. When I ran out of kerosene, I went back to the porch and stood there with Dad's Zippo in my hand. The sun was starting to come up, turning the eastern sky purple. In that pre-dawn light, I could see how far the contamination had spread. The fields were black as far as I could see. The trees along the property line looked like they'd been dipped in tar. Even the sky had a dark tint to it, like the spores were still up there, still spreading, just waiting for wind or rain to carry them further. Behind me, back toward Mitchell's, I heard helicopters. The firebreak crews probably getting into position. I had maybe 10 minutes before they started their burn. Before they did what I should have done hours ago. I flicked the Zippo open. The sound was very loud in that silence. "I'm sorry," I said to Eddie and Preston and Jorge. "I'm sorry I wasn't faster. I'm sorry I didn't know what to do." Eddie's head tilted just slightly, like he heard me, like somewhere deep in whatever was left of him, some part recognized my voice. I lit the Zippo and threw it into the kerosene. The fire took maybe 3 seconds to catch. The kerosene line ignited with a soft whump, and then it was racing across the yard, climbing the barn walls, circling the silos. I ran back inside and slammed the door, sealed it again with duct tape even though it probably didn't matter anymore. From the upstairs window, I watched my farm burn. The barn went first. Old wood, dry as hell despite the spore dust. The flames hit it and it just went up, this column of orange and black smoke rising into the purple dawn. The machine shed was next, and then the silos. Those took longer because they were metal, but once the grain inside caught, they became these giant torches, flames shooting up maybe 100 feet. Eddie and Preston and Jorge were still standing in the yard, watching. The fire had reached them. I could see Jorge's coveralls burning, could see Preston's hair catching, but they didn't move, didn't scream, just stood there like they were waiting for instructions that would never come. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. I owed them that much. I owed them the witness of watching them finally stop. Eddie fell first, just collapsed into the fire, and the flames consumed him. Preston went next, folding at the knees and going down. Jorge stood the longest, maybe a full minute after the others, and then he was down too. All three of them burning, taking the spores with them. The fire was spreading now, jumping from building to field, consuming the contaminated crops. The heat was intense even through the glass. I could feel it on my face, could hear the windows creaking. The whole farm was going up, for 100 acres becoming an inferno, and I just stood there and watched. At 6:15 a.m., the National Guard's helicopters flew over. I could see them through the smoke, big Chinooks trailing flame, starting their own fire line east of my property, creating that break Colonel Briggs had talked about. But my fire was already doing their job, already consuming everything, burning away the contamination. Or trying to, because as I watched, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The spore dust wasn't burning. Not completely. Oh, the organic stuff was going up, the crops, the wooden fence posts, even the topsoil, but the spores themselves were just changing. In the heart of the fire, where the heat was most intense, I could see them glowing. Not burning away, but glowing, like they were feeding on the flames. Growing brighter. I grabbed the binoculars and looked closer. The contaminated soil was turning from black to this dark red, almost orange. The spores were still there. I could see them, these tiny filaments in the ash, but they looked different, thicker, more substantial. My phone rang. Actual ring, not just a text. I answered it. Mr. Paulson? Colonel Briggs, we're seeing some unusual thermal readings from your location. It's not burning right, I said. The fire's not killing them. Static. Then, we suspected that might happen. Mitchell's incident report indicated the spores have thermal adaptive properties. High heat doesn't destroy them. It activates them. Activates them how? We don't know yet. But Mr. Paulson, you need to evacuate now. Whatever's happening in your soil, it's spreading underground. Our ground-penetrating radar is showing movement. What kind of movement? Fast. Heading west, away from the fire, toward your house. I looked down at the floor. The old oak boards Dad had laid in 1981. The foundation underneath poured concrete on Kansas bedrock. And below that, the soil, the land my family had farmed for 5 generations. The land that was now full of spores I just activated by trying to burn them. Something popped in the basement. Then another sound, a crack, like ice breaking. I went to the top of the stairs and looked down. The basement floor was dark, but not just from lack of light. It was moving. The concrete was moving, little cracks spreading across it, and from those cracks, something black was seeping up. Mr. Paulson? Briggs's voice on the phone. Are you still there? They're in my house. Get out. Now, we can extract you if you head north. I hung up. Put the phone in my pocket and went back to the window. The fire was still burning, still consuming the buildings and the fields, but underneath it all, I could see that dark red glow spreading, growing. The spores weren't dying. They were adapting. Dad always said this land would outlast us all. Said it had been here before the Paulsons and would be here after. Said all we did was borrow it for a while, try to make it productive, then pass it on. He was right, but he never imagined passing it on to this. The floor creaked behind me. I turned and saw the hallway carpet darkening, black tendrils spreading up through the fibers. They were coming up through the house now, through every crack and seam, reaching for me. I went to Dad's bedroom and closed the door, stuffed towels under the gap. It wouldn't stop them, nothing would stop them, but it bought me time. Time to think, time to choose. From the window, I could see the National Guard's fire line working its way east, creating that break, that barrier. And beyond it, Wichita, 200,000 people. My cousin Beth, Danny from the Texaco, Jorge's daughter, studying to be a nurse. The phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. This is KDHE. If you remain in the contamination zone, you become a vector. You will spread the infection. Please evacuate. I looked at the door. The towels were turning dark now, the spores seeping through. I looked at my hands. Clean, still human. For now. Outside, the sun was fully up, turning the smoke from my burning farm into this ugly orange haze. I could see the deer through it, still sitting in the yard where I'd left it yesterday morning. Before the explosion, before Eddie and Preston and Jorge came back, before I learned that some things can't be killed by fire. My phone rang again. Briggs. I let it ring. The door was bulging now, the wood swelling as the spores pushed against it. Any second now they'd break through. Any second now I'd become like Eddie. Still moving, still operating on motor memory, still farming land that would never grow anything again. I opened the window. The fire had reached the house now, flames licking up the siding. The heat was incredible. The smoke made it hard to breathe. Below me, maybe 20 feet down, was the driveway. The same driveway I'd run up and down as a kid, where Dad taught me to ride a bike, where I'd stood with him 3 years ago, watching the ambulance take Mom away for the last time. The door cracked. Black tendrils forced their way through. I climbed out onto the windowsill. The phone in my pocket buzzed one more time. Another alert. Emergency alert. Firebreak operations underway. Expect burns. I jumped. The fall was shorter than I expected, or maybe longer. Time got weird there at the end. I remember hitting the driveway, remember the pain in my leg where I landed wrong. Remember looking up at the house. My house, Dad's house, great-grandpa's house, and seeing it burn. Remember Eddie's Massey Ferguson sitting in the yard, covered in soot but intact. Remember thinking, I can still drive. I can still get out. Remember pulling myself up, limping to the tractor, climbing into the seat that Eddie had sat in just hours ago. The seat still warm from the fire. Remember starting the engine, it caught on the first try, Dad would have been proud, and putting it in gear. Remember driving north, toward the guards line, toward evacuation and safety and a future without this land. Remember looking in the side mirror and seeing my face. Seeing the black dust on my hands from where I'd climbed out the window. Seeing it on my collar from where the spores had pushed through the door. Seeing it at the corners of my mouth, tasting it on my tongue. Remember thinking, I breathed it. When I jumped, when I hit the ground and gasped, I breathed it. Remember driving anyway. Remember reaching the guards' checkpoint, 2 Humvees blocking the road. Remember the soldiers in hazmat suits signaling me to stop. Remember Colonel Briggs stepping forward, his reflective visor hiding his face. Remember opening my mouth to tell him I was clean, I'd made it out, I was okay. Remember no sound coming out. Remember my hands not responding right when I tried to put the tractor in park. Remember them moving on their own, following the pattern. Work the clutch. Shift the gear. Work the fields. Remember Briggs's voice through his respirator. He's contaminated. Quarantine protocol. Remember them guiding the tractor to the side of the road. Remember sitting there while they set up barriers around me. Remember watching the sun rise higher, burning away the morning haze. Remember thinking about Eddie and Preston and Jorge working through the night. Remember understanding why they hadn't stopped. Remember the tractor's engine idling beneath me. Remember my hands on the controls, still knowing what to do. Still working. Still farming land that wasn't there anymore. And I'm still here now, 6 hours later, or 12, or maybe it's been days. Time's hard to track when you don't need to sleep, when you don't need to eat or drink or do any of the things that humans do. They've got me in a containment area now. Me and maybe 30 others, farmhands mostly, a few truckers, one lady who I think used to work at the Mitchell facility. We're all operating on memory, all doing the jobs we remember. The lady from Mitchell keeps typing on an invisible keyboard. The truckers walk in circles, following imaginary routes. And I sit here in Eddie's tractor, my hands on the controls, going through the motions of work I'll never finish. From here, I can see the fire still burning to the south. They're expanding it, I think, taking more land, creating a bigger break. Wichita's safe, probably. Beth and Danny and Jorge's daughter. And me? I'm still a Paulson, still on my land, in a way. Still doing what my family's always done, working these fields, trying to make them productive. Just not for anything that can eat anymore. My phone's still in my pocket. It buzzes sometimes with messages I can't read. Emergency alerts I don't need. The screen's cracked from when I fell, but I can still see the glow when it lights up. I wonder if Dad would understand. If he'd be proud that I stayed, that I'm still working, that I didn't abandon the family land even when it abandoned me. I wonder if Eddie understood those last moments before the fire took him. If some part of him knew I was doing what had to be done. I wonder if I'm really thinking these things, or if it's just motor memory. The last thoughts I had before the spores shut down everything that made me me. I wonder, but my hands keep moving, keep working the controls, keep farming. And I'll keep wondering, I think, for however long I've got left. Days, weeks, until my body finally breaks down and I stop moving. The sun's setting now, or rising. Hard to keep track when you don't blink anymore, when your eyes just stay open and dry and staring at whatever's in front of you. Briggs comes by every few hours. I think it's every few hours, though time's gotten slippery, and stands outside the barrier they've put around me. Chain link fence, 8 feet high, topped with razor wire like I'm dangerous. Like I might escape and contaminate someone. He's still in the hazmat suit. Sometimes he talks. Mostly he just watches. "Can you hear me, Mr. Paulson?" I want to answer. Want to tell him yes. I'm in here. I'm still me. My mouth opens. I can feel it opening. Feel the muscles moving. But nothing comes out except this sound. This wet clicking in the back of my throat. Like something's growing there. Something is growing there. I can feel it when I try to swallow, this thickness, this texture that shouldn't be there. "We're analyzing the spores from your property," Briggs says. He's got a tablet in his hands, looking at it while he talks to me. Not really talking to me, talking at me, like I'm already gone and he's just narrating for the record. They're different from Mitchell's baseline strain. The heat exposure caused a mutation. They're not just spreading anymore, they're evolving. Adapting to thermal stress. My hands adjust the throttle. Neutral to first gear. Clutch in, clutch out. The pattern Dad taught me when I was 14, standing on the running board of this same tractor because I couldn't reach the pedals sitting down. He'd said, "Feel it, Kenny. Don't think about it. Just feel when the engine needs to shift." and I'd felt it, and now my hands feel it still, even though the tractor's been in park for hours, days, however long I've been sitting here. The fire didn't stop them. It made them stronger, more aggressive. Briggs shifts his weight, and even through the hazmat suit I can tell he's exhausted. His shoulders slump. His head hangs. We're going to have to expand the fire break. Take everything between here and the Oklahoma border. Maybe 10,000 acres. Maybe more. 10,000. Jesus Christ. That's the Murphy farm, where old Bill Murphy still runs cattle even though beef prices have been shit for 5 years. That's the Rodriguez place. 3 brothers working 800 acres of wheat and sorghum. That's the Schneider property that's been in their family since before statehood. Since before Kansas was even Kansas. All of it gone. All of it burning. All of it feeding the spores. There are others like you, Briggs continues. He's scrolling through his tablet now, not looking at me at all. In the other containment areas, 37 so far, all doing this. Operating equipment, walking routes, going through motions. One woman's been standing at a McDonald's cash register for 2 days, just standing there, hands moving like she's taking orders, scanning invisible items, making change from a register that's not there. He pauses, looks up at me. I can see my reflection in his visor. Dark face, darker than Eddie's was, covered in those thread-like filaments that grow out of the spores. My John Deere cap still on my head. Somehow, the oil stain on the brim. Her daughter's in Wichita, wants to see her, keeps calling, asking when her mother can come home. We can't let her, obviously. Can't let any of you leave containment. Your vectors, mobile contamination units. Jorge's daughter, the one studying to be a nurse, the one who graduated last month, who Jorge showed me pictures of in her scrubs. Grinning so wide her face looked like it would split. I wonder if she knows her father's still working. Still harrowing fields that don't exist, will never exist again. Still going through the motions because that's all the spores leave you. The motions, the muscle memory, the work. My leg hurts where I landed wrong jumping from the window. That's good, right? Pain means nerves still work. Means I'm still alive in some way that matters. Except Eddie walked on a bad hip for 30 years. Preston sorted cattle with 3 broken fingers. He'd never gotten properly set after a gate slammed on them. The spores don't care about pain. They just keep the body moving until there's nothing left to move. Until the cells break down completely and you finally stop. Briggs's radio crackles. He listens, his head turning away from me. Then he looks back, and I can hear it in his voice even through the respirator's distortion. Fear. We're getting reports of movement in Wichita. People showing symptoms. Black marks on their skin. The wet cough. 3 cases so far, maybe more. The spores are spreading faster than we projected. Faster than our models said was possible. My hands clutch in. The tractor lurches forward an inch even though there's nowhere to go. Even though I'm surrounded by chain link. The pattern. Work the field. Do the job. Dad's voice in my head. You stop working, the land dies. You keep working. Maybe you got a chance. Except the land's already dead. And I'm still working. I'm sorry, Mr. Paulson. We thought we could contain this. Thought the fire break would work. Thought we could burn it out before it reached population centers. He turns to leave, then stops. Turns back. For what it's worth, your cousin Beth was asking about you. Danny Reeves too. I told them you made it out. Told them you were in protective custody in Topeka. Seemed kinder than the truth. Beth, who sent me a text yesterday, or 3 days ago, or last week. Time's so fucked up now. She'd asked if I was out, if I was safe. And I'd wanted to tell her yes, wanted to lie, wanted to say anything except the truth. But my hands wouldn't work the phone. Wouldn't stop moving through the patterns long enough to type a message. Briggs walks away and I'm alone again with the other vectors. The lady from Mitchell still typing on her invisible keyboard, her fingers flying across keys that aren't there. The truckers still walking their routes, making deliveries to addresses that don't exist. All of us performing our last jobs forever. All of us trapped in the thing we did best, the thing we did most, the thing that defined us. I think about that sometimes, about how the spores don't just kill you, they preserve you, turn you into a monument to yourself. Eddie farming, Preston hauling, Jorge harrowing, and me sitting on this tractor working controls that don't do anything anymore. Maybe that's worse than dying. Maybe that's the real horror, not that you end, but that you don't. That you keep going, keep performing, keep being useful even after there's no one left to be useful for. Night falls. I'm pretty sure it's night. The light's different anyway, and the stars come out. Dad used to say you could tell the weather by the stars. Red sky at night, sailors delight. Red sky at morning, sailors take warning. Mare's tails and mackerel scales make tall ships carry low sails. All these little bits of prairie wisdom passed down from his father's father, going back generations. Little pieces of knowledge about land and sky and weather that don't mean anything anymore because the prairie's dead. Because the sky doesn't matter when you can't breathe it. Because weather patterns are irrelevant when the ground itself is poisoned. My phone buzzes in my pocket. The vibration is strange against my thigh. I'd forgotten the phone was there, forgotten I even had pockets. The screen's so cracked I can barely read it, but I make out enough through the spiderweb of broken glass. Emergency alert. Mandatory evacuation. All Kansas residents proceed north immediately. All of Kansas. They're giving up the whole state. I think about Beth in Wichita packing her car, throwing clothes in trash bags because there's no time for suitcases, grabbing photo albums and important papers and leaving everything else. Danny wherever he went after they closed the Texaco. Jorge's daughter putting her nursing textbooks in boxes, getting ready to run from a state that's killing itself from the inside out. I think about the land under Wichita streets, under the hospitals where Jorge's daughter will never work now, under the schools and houses and churches, the same land that runs under my farm, under Mitchell's facility, under all these contaminated fields. One continuous sheet of limestone bedrock and topsoil, all of it connected. No barriers down there, no firebricks, just earth and the spores spreading through it like roots, like mycelium, like cancer. All of it infected now. My hands work the throttle. The engine revs, except it doesn't because the tractor's off has been off for hours. But my hands don't know that. They just keep following the pattern. Rev the engine, check the gauges, listen for problems. There's a problem, all right? The problem is me, is all of us vectors, still operating, still spreading spores with every movement, every breath, every second we keep existing. The problem is that fire doesn't work and quarantine doesn't work and maybe nothing works except time. Except waiting for us to break down. Except hoping the spores eat everything they can reach and then starve. But spores don't starve. That's not how they work. They just go dormant. Wait, and when conditions are right again, when something new and organic comes along, they wake up. The barrier around me shifts. Chain link scraping against concrete. Someone's moving it, expanding it. More contaminated people being brought in. I see a man in a Carhartt jacket, the brown one with the corduroy collar that every farmer in Kansas seems to own. He's operating an invisible combine, hands moving through the motions of driving, harvesting, unloading. A teenage kid in a quick shop uniform going through the motions of stocking shelves, his hands reaching for products that aren't there. An old woman folding laundry, her gnarled fingers smoothing invisible fabric, her lips moving like she's counting. 1, 2, 3. Fold. Stack. Repeat. We're growing. The vectors are multiplying. And every one of us is a memory of Kansas, of the work we used to do, preserved forever in bodies that won't stop moving. More people arrive as the night deepens. A mailman walking his route. A teacher writing on an invisible chalkboard. A mechanic turning a wrench on an invisible engine. All of us going through our patterns. All of us trapped in what we were. I wonder if this is what ghosts are. Not spirits of the dead, but bodies that forgot how to stop. Muscle memory so deep it outlives consciousness. Work so ingrained it becomes involuntary. My phone buzzes again. Another alert. I can't read this one, the screen's too damaged, the crack's too deep. But I don't need to read it. I know what it says. Evacuate. Run. Get out while you can. But I can't run. My body won't let me. My hands stay on the controls. My feet on the pedals. Following the pattern Dad taught me. Following it forever. A woman stumbles into the containment area. Not brought by the guard, she walked here herself, drawn maybe by the other vectors. She's wearing scrubs. Blue scrubs with little cartoon stethoscopes on them. Her face is dark with spores. Her hands moving in front of her like she's adjusting in 4. Checking a chart, documenting symptoms. Jorge's daughter. I try to say her name. Maria. That was it. Maria Rodriguez. 23 years old. Just graduated. Was going to work at Wesley Medical Center in Wichita. Was going to save lives. Now she's checking the vital signs of patients who aren't there. She walks past me, her movements mechanical, purposeful, going through her rounds. And I want to scream, want to tell her to run, to get out, to save herself. But my mouth won't work for anything except that clicking sound. And my hands won't leave the controls. And Maria keeps walking, keeps working. Another vector in the containment area. Another monument to what Kansas used to be. Briggs comes back sometime later, hours, days, I don't know. He's not alone this time. There's someone with him, another hazmat suit, and they're arguing. I can't hear the words, but I can see it in their body language. The angry gestures, the shaking heads. Finally, Briggs turns to me, points at me and the others, says something to his companion. The other person shakes their head violently, points north, toward Wichita, toward where people are still evacuating. Briggs points at us again, at the containment area, at all 37 of us, no more now, maybe 50, maybe more. All of us working our invisible jobs. The argument continues for several minutes. Then the other person throws up their hands and walks away, and Briggs is alone again outside the fence. He stands there for a long time just watching us, watching me. Then he pulls out his radio and says something I can hear through the chain link. Authorized thermite deployment. Target all containment areas. Effective immediately. Thermite, that's not like regular fire. That's the stuff they use to cut through steel. Burns at thousands of degrees. Nothing survives thermite. I'm sorry, Briggs says, and I don't know if he's talking to me or to all of us or to himself. I'm sorry, but you're spreading it. Just by existing, you're spreading it. The spores are in your breath, your skin, everything. We can't contain you. We can't save you. All we can do is... He doesn't finish, just turns and walks away. And I understand, finally understand what Dad meant when he said the land would outlast us all. It's not that the land lives longer. It's that the land remembers. Every person who worked it, every drop of sweat, every moment of labor. The land remembers and preserves and keeps you working even after you're gone. My phone dies sometime during what I think is the third night. The screen goes black and stays black, and no amount of button pressing brings it back. No more emergency alerts. No more messages from people I used to know. No more connection to the world outside this fence. Just silence. The Kansas silence. And in that silence, I work. My hands on the controls. My body going through patterns it's performed 10,000 times. The patterns Dad taught me. The patterns his father taught him. Going back generations. Going back to great-grandpa breaking this land with a mule-drawn plow, teaching his son how to read the soil, how to time the planting, how to work until your back breaks and then work some more because that's what you do. That's what a Paulson does. And somewhere deep inside, in whatever part of me is still Kendrick Paulson, still the 5th generation on land that doesn't belong to anyone anymore. I keep wondering if this is what heritage means. If this is what it means to be rooted in a place so deeply that even death can't pull you free. If this is what Dad meant when he said the land would outlast us all. Not that the land survives, but that it keeps you, preserves you, makes you part of itself forever. The trucks arrive at dawn. Big military trucks, the kind with the canvas covers over the back. They park outside all the containment areas. I can see them at the other fences too, dozens of them forming a perimeter. Soldiers get out, still in hazmat suits, and they're carrying something. Cylinders. Silver cylinders with markings I can't read from here. Thermite. They're setting them up around the fence line. One every 10 feet. Careful, methodical, following their own patterns, their own training. And I wonder if someday they'll be like us. If the spores will get them too and they'll spend eternity setting up thermite charges that aren't there, following orders from commanders who stopped existing. Maria walks past me again, still checking on her invisible patients, still adjusting IVs, still taking temperatures, still doing all the things a good nurse does. Her father's in here somewhere too. I saw him earlier, still harrowing, still breaking up soil. The Rodriguez family still working, still serving. Even now, the man in the Carhartt jacket is running his combine in circles. The old woman is folding her invisible laundry. The teenage kid is stocking his invisible shelves. The mailman is walking his route. The teacher is writing on her invisible board. All of us trapped in our last moments of purpose. All of us about to burn. Briggs comes one more time, stands outside the fence. He's not carrying his tablet anymore, just standing there with his hands at his sides. "For what it's worth," he says, his voice muffled by the respirator. You tried to stop it, tried to burn it out before we got here. That took guts, took something most people don't have." My hands clutch in. The invisible engine responds. The pattern continues. "Your cousin Beth made it to Nebraska. Danny Reeves too. They're safe. Thought you'd want to know." Beth, Danny, safe. That's good. That's something. "I'm sorry we couldn't save you. Sorry this is how it ends." He pauses. "My grandfather farmed in Nebraska. Wheat mostly. He used to say the same thing your dad probably said, that the land outlasts everything, that it's patient, that it waits." He's quiet for a moment. Then, he was wrong. The land doesn't wait. It just takes everything you give it and asks for more. Takes your sweat, your blood, your life. And when you're gone, it takes even your death. The soldiers are backing away from the thermite charges now, getting to a safe distance. Briggs backs away too, still watching me, watching all of us. "Goodbye, Mr. Paulson. I hope," he stops, shakes his head. "I hope it's fast." He turns and walks to one of the trucks, gets in. The engines start up, all of them simultaneously, a convoy preparing to leave. I'm still wondering when I see them trigger the thermite. I'm still wondering when the charges ignite with this brilliant white light, brighter than the sun, hotter than anything I've ever felt. I'm still wondering when the heat hits me and I smell my own coveralls igniting, smell my skin burning. I'm still wondering when the tractor finally starts to melt beneath me, the metal running like water, the rubber on the steering wheel turning to smoke. And even then, even as everything burns away, even as my body comes apart in the heat, my hands stay on the controls, still working, still farming, still following the pattern Dad taught me.